Shalom uvracha to everyone. It's Thursday morning, Erev Shabbat Parshat Bereishit. We are entering into the beginning of the new cycle of the year. We just celebrated Simchat Torah, and now we start again. We never leave the Torah, and I wanted to wish you and your families and everyone in your extended families best wishes as we start this new cycle. Some people in Eastern Europe used to say a guten Winter, it should be a good winter, and hopefully that will be for us, as I mentioned in the little public service announcement, the PSA that I sent out earlier this week. Please make sure that you've gotten your flu shot, and please make sure to vote to have your voice and your vote counted. So Parshat Bereishit, of course, is the beginning of the world. The beginning of the world as we know it. Of course, while some people want to read the first chapter of Genesis as a kind of blow-by-blow scientific account of what happened, and there are actually books that try to fit in the cosmological theories of the Big Bang or other events into the language of the text and the Midrashim, I don't think that's the best way to go. I think that the simple reading is the Torah is not interested in a blow-by-blow account. It doesn't tell us exactly how light and energy and mass and the Big Bang happened. It simply describes in broader terms that the world was made in a purposeful way by a benevolent creator. The exact details, again, one can study through science. I still remember very vividly someone asking my teacher, Nachama Leibovitz, Zichronali Vracha, Professor Nachama Leibovitz, why doesn't the Torah, if the Torah has everything in it and it's so important, why doesn't it present to us the theory of relativity, of E equals mc squared, and other theories that are so important to the functioning of the society? And without missing a beat, she said, because it has more important things to focus on, about given that we have a world full of energy and physics, how do we treat that? It's more important for us to know what to do with nuclear weapons than necessarily to know the details of how to split the atom. Once we split the atom, human ingenuity and human prowess, what do we then do morally, ethically? How do we handle these gifts and these amazing powers that have been given to us here on earth? So Genesis chapter 1, of course, describes a process, as I said, of a benevolent creator who creates from disorder order. And that's the progress as we see from the first day through the sixth day. There's a constant separation. Havdalah is one of the key words, Vayavdel. There's an ordering, there's a naming. In fact, many have pointed out since the time of Kasuto, if I'm not mistaken, and Rav David Zvi Hoffman, how the first 3 days and the second 3 days parallel each other linguistically and conceptually. We move from the inanimate, from the sky and the sea and the clouds and the earth, to vegetation, to things that are in motion, to things that actually are animate, the animals, the birds, the fish, to eventually reaching the pinnacle with the human being who's created actually in the image of God. And so we have this movement from chaos to order. We have this movement from inanimate to animate. We have the movement from less complex and less locomotion to more complex and more locomotion. And in that context, I was very taken with a comment that I saw from Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, the great Jewish thinker and leader who's contributed so much to the community, both the Orthodox community and the general Jewish community. Many people don't know this, but Rabbi, until the General Assembly of the federations in the late 60s, Federation wasn't giving any money to Jewish day schools. Kimat was giving almost no money to Jewish day schools, and it was Rabbi Greenberg and others who really pushed for the Jewish communal world to take Jewish education seriously. And it's because of his efforts that there was a transformation in the world of federation and recognizing that. And it's a zchut that will always stand for Rabbi Greenberg, as well as his involvement in so many other causes in the Jewish community. And Rabbi Greenberg points out something I think very beautiful. In the world that we live, we as human beings perceive ourselves as moving from life to death, that, we're one step closer to the grave every day as we get older. We get slower. We forget things. What we could have done when we were 20, we can't do when we're 55, and things of that nature. And in from some perspectives, obviously that's the world, that's the life that we lead. But Genesis chapter 1 is telling us that we should look at the world in a different way. We should look at the world from the perspective, so to speak, a godly perspective, an eternal perspective, from under the view of eternity. The world, we hope, is moving, and we should see ourselves as moving to an affirmation of greater life, of greater animation, of greater locomotion, of greater inspiration in the literal sense of the word. We go from death, from things which are inanimate to things which are animate. We go from total death and from just the sea and the sky in very static forms to a tremendous amount. We go from light on the first day, which is very static, to the sun and the moon on the fourth day, the parallelism. We go from the second day, which has the rakia, which has the sky, but it has nothing in the sky, to the fifth day, where you have the birds and the fish in the water and the sky and the animation and life and vegetation. Of course, on the third day, things on the ground, but then we have, on the sixth day, we have not only things on the ground, but animals, and then the human being, which is the pinnacle of creation. Vayivra Elokim et Adam b'tselem b'tzalmo, b'tselem Elokim barauto, zachar nekeva barautam, 3 times the repetition of that key verb, livro, that unique verb of total creation, the human being in the image of God. And so we move, rather than moving through life and viewing it as one step closer to the grave, we view it as a development of life, and we affirm life. And one of the greatest messages of Genesis 1 is that desire for life, and that desire that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought into, in an act of tremendous chesed, an act of grace, and an act of tremendous love, God creates. And we are the first thing that God says to human beings, Pru Revu Milu et Haaretz. Go and continue the work of God. Be a partner and recreate. You can create as well. And you can make sure that the world is functioning. And you can bring greater life to the world. Rabbi Soloveitchik very famously in his magnum opus, The Lonely Man of Faith, spoke about Genesis 1 of the human being described in majestic terms. Okay, the human being is majestic. He's dignified because he or she, zachar nekeva barautam, that the human being, the individual, can conquer space, can conquer time, can eradicate disease, can find vaccines, can find therapeutics, can help heal all of the ills, both physical and social, in the world. The human being becomes a partner with God in Genesis 1, and that's what we are called upon. And certainly in this year, when there is so much death and suffering, in this year that we've experienced a lot of the choshech, we need much more or. We need to affirm life. We need to affirm reaching out to other people. We need to affirm and push the dignity and the majesty of the human being. We've all experienced the humility of recognizing that we're not totally in control, but we really need to affirm and bring that majesty and bring and emphasize our desire for life, do everything to protect life, do everything safely, securely, with the right protocols, and bring the world to a place of greater life. We hope that our scientific and medical community, endowed with the Spirit of God, endowed with rationality and reason and science, which is a gift from God, will be able to give us the kind of therapeutics and the kind of vaccines and medicines that will help us emerge from this crisis. And we hope that all of us will make sure to take care of our families and our friends and affirm life in every way, shape, and possible, and step up to that plate and continue to be a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu during this time and in the coming months and years ahead. Shabbat Shalom.